This is my true story. I went to update my papers because I wanted everything in order before I got older. I thought it would be simple. A few signatures, a few checks, nothing more. I never imagined that one small mistake, forgetting my marriage documents, would lead me to something that almost took my breath away. When I walked back into my home, I heard my son say something that made my whole body freeze, and when I saw what was in his hand, I understood everything. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. And please subscribe so my stories can reach more people. I woke up that morning thinking it would be a simple day. I told myself I would go to the lawyer's office, sign a few papers, and come back home in time to make lunch. I didn't expect anything stressful. I didn't expect anything strange. I just wanted to update my documents so everything would be clear later, especially as I got older. When I arrived, the lawyer greeted me kindly. He laid out the forms, pointed to the spaces where I needed to sign, and explained each part slowly so I could understand everything. I listened carefully, wanting to make sure I did things the right way. But halfway through the meeting, as I reached into my bag to take out my documents, I realized something important was missing. My marriage papers. The papers that were needed to verify my information before we continued. My stomach sank a little, and I felt embarrassed because I thought I had brought everything. I always tried to be organized, but that morning I had rushed, and in that rush I forgot the most important file. I looked up at the lawyer and told him quietly that I had left the papers at home. I expected him to look annoyed or disappointed, but he didn't. He smiled gently and said there was no rush. He told me I could come back anytime with the documents and we could finish everything without a problem. His calmness helped me breathe again. I nodded and gathered my things. I didn't want to waste time. I wanted to get the file and return quickly so the work could be completed that same day. I didn't want to forget again. I didn't want to leave things unfinished. Outside, I waved for a taxi and got inside. I sat quietly during the ride, thinking only about the file I had left behind. I didn't think about anything else. I didn't imagine anything strange waiting for me at home. I didn't think there was anything to be worried about. When the taxi stopped in front of the house, I paid the driver and walked up the steps. I avoided making noise because I didn't want anyone to ask questions. I just wanted to go straight to my room, grab the file, and leave again. I thought it would take less than a minute. The house felt calm when I opened the door. There was no shouting, no movement, no sign that anything unusual was happening. I felt relieved, thinking I could slip in and out without anyone noticing. I walked slowly toward the hallway, planning to pass the living room quietly. I didn't want to disturb my son or his wife if they were resting or watching TV. I just wanted to get those papers. But then something made me stop. A sound, a voice. My son's voice. It was low, not like his usual tone. There was something urgent in it, something that made me pause before taking my next step. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I didn't even want to hear anything. I only stopped because the way he spoke didn't sound normal. It didn't sound like casual conversation. It didn't sound like anything meant to be heard. I stood in the hallway, holding my bag against my chest, listening because I couldn't help it. I felt a strange pressure in my chest. Like my body already knew something was wrong, even before my mind understood it. I thought maybe they were arguing, or maybe planning something small. Maybe talking about a bill or a delivery. Something normal. Something harmless. I kept telling myself that. I didn't want to imagine anything serious. I didn't want to think my return would uncover something I wasn't supposed to see. I took one more small step forward, quiet as I could, hoping to just grab the papers and leave without being noticed. I thought I could reach my room without hearing more, but the voices grew clearer. And before I could stop myself, I realized I was already too close to ignore what was being said. That simple errand, the quick trip to fix my mistake, was about to show me something that would change everything I believed about my own family. Something I never expected. Something I wish I had never heard. I stepped into the house as quietly as I could, thinking only about slipping into my room and grabbing the missing papers. I wasn't trying to listen to anything. I wasn't trying to find trouble. I just didn't want to interrupt anyone or make a scene over something so simple. The hallway felt strangely still as I walked deeper inside. I moved slowly, almost tiptoeing, hoping no one would notice me. I held my bag tightly against my side, trying to make myself small, trying not to draw attention. Then I heard voices. Soft at first, almost like a whisper carried through the air. I didn't want to hear them, but they reached me before I could turn away. Two voices. A man and a woman. My son and his wife. I froze. Not because I meant to listen, but because the tone of their voices was different. Not relaxed, not casual, not the kind of conversation people have when they're discussing chores or bills or plans for dinner. There was something low and urgent in the way my son spoke, something tight in the way his wife answered. For a moment, I stood perfectly still in the hallway, unsure if I should keep walking or turn around and pretend I had forgotten something else. I didn't want them to know I had come back. I didn't want to be in the middle of anything private, but the words kept coming. Soft, but clear enough to hear if I stayed where I was. I didn't step closer, but I also couldn't make myself move away. My body felt stuck, caught between fear and curiosity, between duty and instinct. My heart started beating faster, not because I expected anything terrible, but because I could feel something wasn't right. A mother knows. A mother can feel it in her bones when something is wrong. My son's voice dropped even lower, almost like he didn't want anyone to hear him, not even the walls. That alone made my chest tighten. I told myself to keep walking, to ignore whatever they were discussing, to focus on the papers I needed to retrieve. But my feet didn't move. It was like something held me in place, warning me quietly, telling me to listen. I leaned slightly toward the living room entrance, just enough to hear the tone more clearly. Not the words yet, just the tension, the seriousness, the hidden edge in their voices. I felt a small tremble run through my hands as I held onto my bag. I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. I didn't want to imagine that the urgency in their voices had anything to do with me. But the way they spoke, the speed, the caution, the quiet excitement, mixed with something darker, it made my stomach twist painfully. I could hear my son's footsteps shifting, moving from one side of the room to the other like he was pacing. His wife's voice stayed quieter, like she was trying not to let her emotions spill out. I took one slow breath, trying to steady myself. I wasn't ready for anything more than a normal day, a normal errand, a normal moment in my home. But nothing felt normal now. Then, suddenly, my son's voice sharpened, not loud, but firm, urgent enough to make my heart jump. It was the kind of tone people use when they are seriously planning something important, something secret. I stood there, frozen in the hallway, breathing slow and quiet, waiting for whatever came next. And in that stillness, in that soft murmur of voices behind the wall, I felt fear settle into my chest. Not panic, not alarm, but a quiet fear that told me my life was about to change in a way I didn't ask for and didn't expect. I didn't know what they were planning. I didn't know what the urgency meant. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't supposed to hear it. And that realization made my hands shake even more. I stood completely still in the hallway, telling myself to breathe slowly, telling myself not to jump to conclusions, telling myself that whatever they were talking about probably had nothing to do with me. I kept reminding myself that families have private conversations all the time, and not every whispered word is something dangerous. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. But then I heard it, clear, sharp, direct, my son's voice, and the sentence he spoke cut straight through me before I even understood the meaning behind it. Once she signs this, everything changes. The words hit me, like something cold, something heavy, something meant to warn. It wasn't the kind of sentence people say when they're planning a happy surprise. It wasn't the kind of sentence someone uses when they're trying to do something kind. It sounded like preparation. It sounded like expectation. It sounded like a plan being set into motion. His wife let out a small giggle, but it wasn't joyful. It wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was a nervous, excited sound, like she was waiting for something to fall into place, like she was waiting for a puzzle to be completed. My chest tightened. I gripped my bag against my body without realizing it, almost as if hugging it would keep me steady. I felt the air leave my lungs for a moment. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, slow and cold, spreading through me like a quiet warning. I tried to tell myself I misunderstood. I tried to think maybe they were talking about something else. Maybe a delivery, maybe a bill, maybe papers that had nothing to do with me. I tried to push away the fear rising inside me, but the tone in my son's voice wouldn't leave my mind, the seriousness, the weight, the eagerness. His wife whispered something I couldn't hear clearly, but the tone of it made my stomach twist. They were excited. They were waiting. They were preparing. And whatever they were discussing required my signature. I felt my heartbeat pound in my ears. It felt hard, fast, unsteady. It felt like my body was reacting before my mind could catch up. Something wasn't right. Something was wrong. And my instincts, the same instincts that raised that boy from the time he was small, told me loud and clear that this wasn't just a conversation. It was a plan. I took a tiny step back, afraid the floor might creak, afraid they might hear me. I didn't want them to know I was home. I didn't want them to know I heard anything. I didn't want them to change their words because of me. I needed to understand what they were planning. The air around me felt heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The hallway, usually warm and familiar, suddenly felt cold and foreign. My son's voice softened again, but even then I could hear the control in it, the determination, the expectation that whatever they were planning would happen exactly as they wanted. Once she signs this, those words wouldn't leave my mind. They circled around and around, echoing inside my chest, tightening the fear inside me. A mother knows when something is wrong. A mother feels danger long before anyone says it out loud. And in that moment, standing alone in the hallway of my own home, I felt danger creeping closer with every second. I didn't move. I didn't breathe loudly. I just stood there, my heart pounding, my hands shaking, my mind racing with questions I didn't want the answers to. And as I listened to their quiet voices, I realized something painful. My life, my home, my security, everything I thought was safe might not be safe at all. I stayed where I was for a moment, frozen in place, trying to convince myself that what I heard was nothing serious. I wanted so badly to believe that my son and his wife were talking about something harmless. I told myself maybe they were planning a surprise for me. Maybe they were arranging something thoughtful. Maybe they were excited about something good. I kept trying to push away the fear growing inside my chest. But my instincts didn't agree. They spoke louder than my thoughts, louder than my hopes, louder than the excuses I tried to make. Something about their tone didn't feel right. It wasn't warm, it wasn't soft, it wasn't loving. There was something sharper in the way they spoke, something that felt hidden, planned, rehearsed. I took a slow step forward, careful not to make any noise. My feet felt heavy, like the floor might betray me if I moved too quickly. I didn't want them to hear me. I didn't want them to know I was home. I just wanted to understand what was happening behind that doorway. My heart beat faster with every quiet step. It wasn't a calm beat. It was a warning beat, the kind that tells you something bad is coming. I could feel the air around me getting colder, as if the house itself understood what I was about to hear. I leaned slightly toward the living room entrance, not enough for them to see me, but enough for me to listen better. I could hear their voices more clearly now, the way my son spoke with confidence, the way his wife whispered with excitement. There was no warmth in their words. There was only planning. A mother knows when something is wrong. We feel it before we see it. We sense it before anyone says it. And in that moment, I felt it everywhere. In my hands, shaking softly. In my chest, tightening slowly. In my stomach, twisting with dread. I tried to tell myself to walk away, to go get my papers, to leave the house, to pretend I heard nothing. But I couldn't move. Something inside me needed to hear more, even though another part of me was begging to turn around and leave. I listened harder, hoping their next words would calm me, hoping I would hear something normal, something that made sense, something that would make my fear disappear. I waited for a laugh, for a soft word, for anything gentle. But nothing gentle came. Their voices stayed low, serious, focused, and that seriousness made it hard to breathe. I thought about all the years I had lived in that house, all the meals I cooked, all the times I helped them both, all the sacrifices I made. I never imagined that I would one day stand in a hallway, afraid of the words coming from my own child's mouth. I felt my fingers tighten around my bag, gripping it like it was something protective. I swallowed hard, trying to calm the shaking inside me, but nothing helped. My instincts whispered louder and louder, telling me something terrible was hidden in that room. I stepped even closer, silent, as possible, feeling each movement like a heavy weight on my shoulders. The wall felt cold when I leaned toward it, and for a moment, I wished I could disappear into it. My son's voice grew clearer, and the tone of it made my skin crawl. His wife sounded eager in a way that didn't feel right. Their energy was focused, calculated, prepared, not loving, not caring, not safe. I knew then that whatever they were discussing wasn't small and it wasn't harmless. I felt the truth forming in the back of my mind slowly, painfully. I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to believe it. But my instincts kept pushing the truth forward, telling me to listen, telling me to look, telling me to face whatever was on the other side of that wall. I stood there, almost shaking now, knowing I had to see what they were talking about, because every part of my body was warning me that my life was about to change, and not in a good way. I moved one more step toward the living room, slow and careful, afraid that even the smallest sound might give me away. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like the whole hallway could hear it. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself because my legs suddenly felt weak, almost shaky. I didn't want to see anything. I didn't want to hear anything more. But something inside me pushed me forward, telling me I needed to know the truth no matter how painful it was. I leaned just enough to peek around the corner, barely an inch, just enough to see inside the room. And when my eyes focused, everything inside me stopped. My breath, my heartbeat, my thoughts, everything. There, in my son's hands, was a stack of papers, thick papers, legal papers, not the kind people sign for a delivery or a simple agreement. These were planned papers, prepared papers, papers that looked official and dangerous at the same time. The top sheet caught my eye first. The letters were big, bold, and impossible to ignore. Power of attorney. Full control. I read it once, then again, and a third time. Each time the words cut deeper. My name was printed at the top. My full name, clear as day. Right underneath it, in fresh ink, was my son's name as the person who would gain full control, full access, full rights over everything. Over me. My chest tightened so hard I had to cover my mouth to stop a sound from escaping. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe those were my papers, prepared behind my back. My life, my rights, my decisions, all ready to be handed over without my knowledge. My son's fingers tapped the papers as he explained something to his wife. He didn't look worried. He didn't look guilty. He looked focused, confident, prepared, like he had been planning this for a long time. I watched as he ran his finger over the signature line, my signature line, like he was already imagining the moment I would sign it. My hands trembled so hard I had to grip the wall to stay standing. Beside him, his wife leaned closer, her eyes scanning the documents with interest. She nodded happily, almost excitedly, like she was looking at a prize. Not at a document that would take away my independence, not at something that could strip me of everything I had left. There were red tabs everywhere on the papers, small stickers marking every place they wanted me to sign, every place they needed me to approve their control, perfectly placed, clearly labeled, all ready for me to sign without question. I felt my heart drop lower with every detail I saw. They had thought this through. They had planned every little part. They didn't want me to read anything. They didn't want me to ask anything. They just wanted my signature. My son lifted the top sheet again and smoothed it out, checking that everything was straight. His face showed no hesitation, no conflict, no second thoughts, just certainty. A certainty that scared me more than anything I had seen in my life. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I blinked fast, not wanting them to fall. I didn't want to make a sound. I didn't want them to know I was standing there. I didn't want them to stop talking or change their behavior. I needed to hear the truth from their own mouths. The papers shook slightly in my son's hands from his excitement. He wasn't scared. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't hesitant. He was eager. And seeing that eagerness, seeing how ready he was to take control of my life without me even knowing, made something inside my chest crack. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a simple plan. This wasn't a mistake. This was a trap, a careful, deliberate trap, and I had almost walked right into it. I stayed there in the corner, staring at the papers that were meant to erase my freedom, papers that were supposed to trick me, papers that could have changed my entire life with one simple signature. And in that moment, I realized something painful and terrifying. My own son was ready to take everything from me, not because he needed to, not because he cared, but because he wanted control, and he almost got it. I kept staring at the papers in his hands, my fingers gripping the wall so tightly I felt my nails pressing into it. I wished I could look away. I wished I could pretend I hadn't seen anything. But my eyes stayed on them, frozen because I knew the truth now. I knew I wasn't imagining anything. I knew they were planning something real, something cruel, something meant to change my life without my permission. Then I heard his wife whisper something, and her words cut straight through me. She said that once I signed those papers, they could finally move me out. Move me out, not help me, not support me, remove me, push me out of the house I thought I was safe in. She said they could sell the house, my house, the home I had built with years of hard work, memories, and sacrifice. She said it casually, like she was talking about selling an old piece of furniture. Like it didn't matter who had lived there all those years. Like I wasn't standing just a few steps away, still breathing, still alive. And then she said something even worse. She said they could use the money to pay off her debts. Her voice didn't shake. She didn't sound ashamed. She sounded excited. She sounded relieved. Like my life being uprooted was nothing more than the solution to her problems. My son nodded. He didn't correct her. He didn't defend me. He didn't even hesitate. He agreed. He agreed with everything. My hands started shaking uncontrollably. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. I looked at the papers again. The red tabs were everywhere, on the first page, on the second, on the last. They had marked every signature spot in bright, clear stickers so I wouldn't miss them, so I wouldn't ask questions, so I would sign quickly. This wasn't something they had decided in one conversation. This was planned, carefully planned. They had taken time to prepare it, time to print the documents, time to mark them, time to create a plan for what they would do after I signed. They had organized everything, but they had not prepared for me to walk in early. They didn't expect me to hear their voices. They didn't expect me to see the truth. They didn't expect me to come back before they were ready. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stop myself from making any sound. My breath felt loud inside my body, like it was echoing in my chest. I felt a deep pain, stronger than fear, stronger than shock. The pain of knowing that the two people I lived with, people I trusted, were planning to use me. I watched as my son pointed to the signature line, telling his wife which parts he would make me sign first. They even discussed the best way to explain the papers so I wouldn't question anything. They rehearsed the lines. They practiced them. I felt my heart break in a quiet, heavy way. It wasn't a sudden crack. It was slow, deep. The kind of break that changes a person forever. The kind that comes when you see someone you love treat you like a problem they need to get rid of. My son lifted the papers again, holding them up to the light, checking every detail. He was proud of what he had done. Proud of this plan. Proud of how prepared everything looked. He didn't see me. He didn't hear me. He didn't imagine for one moment that I was standing just a few steps behind him, watching him choose greed over love. His wife leaned against him, smiling, talking about what they would do once everything was finally settled. Once I signed, once they gained control, once I was gone. Their voices blended together, cold and excited, planning a future that didn't include me. A future built on my signature, my silence, my trust. I stood there in the hallway, my heart pounding painfully, knowing that if I had returned just 1 hour later, if I hadn't forgotten my documents, my life would have been handed over to them completely, without me even understanding how it happened. Everything they wanted depended on one thing, my signature, and they were ready to take it from me. I didn't move. I couldn't move. My feet felt glued to the floor, my body locked in place as if the air around me had turned solid. I stood there, hidden just enough so they couldn't see me, but close enough to hear every word clearly. My heart was beating so loudly inside my chest that I was afraid they would hear it from the living room. I held my breath, trying to quiet myself, but nothing helped. Everything inside me felt tight. My hands shook. My knees felt weak. My throat felt dry. I wanted to step back. I wanted to run. I wanted to pretend I had never heard anything, but my body refused to move. I was frozen, trapped between fear and disbelief. I stared at the papers again from where I stood. Those red tabs, those signature lines, my name printed on every page, my life laid out in a stack of papers that were meant to take everything from me. Seeing it was painful, but hearing them talk about it was worse. The way they spoke, so casual, so calm, so certain, made something inside me break a little more each second. They weren't confused. They weren't unsure. They weren't wrestling with guilt or hesitation. They were planning my future without me. A future where I had no voice, a future where I had no home, a future where I had no control over anything. I felt such a heavy pressure in my chest that it was hard to breathe. My whole body felt smaller, like I was shrinking into the walls of my own house. Even though I was standing hidden in the hallway, I felt exposed, vulnerable, powerless. My son stood there, confident, relaxed, acting as if what he was doing was normal. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look worried about being caught. He didn't even sound like he understood the cruelty of what he was planning. It was just another task for him, something he expected to go smoothly. His wife leaned closer to him, her voice low but full of excitement, whispering the plans they had for my house, my savings, my life. There was no hesitation in her whispers, no sympathy, no softness. She saw me as a barrier that needed to be removed, a burden that needed to be pushed aside, a problem that needed to be solved. I felt a coldness spread through my arms as I listened. It wasn't the kind of cold that comes from weather, it was the cold of betrayal. The cold of realizing the people you live with think of you as an object, something to sign away, something to move out of the way, something they could control if they had the right papers. I took a tiny step backward, careful to keep my movements slow. I didn't want the floor to creak. I didn't want the air to shift. I didn't want them to even suspect I was home. My breathing was shallow, soft, barely there. My son shifted his weight, and the sound of his footsteps sent a jolt of fear through me. I pressed myself against the wall, waiting for him to walk toward the hallway, but he didn't. He stayed in the living room, still talking, still planning. I swallowed hard, trying to keep myself steady. My mind raced with thoughts I didn't want to think. Thoughts about everything I had done for him over the years, thoughts about all the sacrifices I made, thoughts about the trust I put in him. And now I stood there, watching him plan a life where I didn't matter. I tried to remind myself to stay calm, to stay quiet, to stay hidden. If they saw me now, everything would change. They would hide the papers, they would lie, they would sweet-talk me. They would pretend it was all a misunderstanding. And maybe, in my fear and confusion, they could still trick me into signing something. I knew I needed to leave the house quietly. I needed to slip away before they noticed. I needed to get out without them knowing I had heard everything. But my legs wouldn't move. My body was still frozen in the fear of what I had discovered. I watched them from the shadows, the two people I had trusted, planning my erasure like it was nothing more than a business decision. It hurt in a way that words cannot explain, deep, sharp, personal. But finally, after a long moment that felt endless, my body responded. I took one step back, then another, slow, careful, silent. I kept my eyes on them until I was far enough down the hallway that they couldn't see me. Then I turned away, holding in the tears that pushed against my eyes. I backed away from the room, from their voices, from the papers, from the betrayal, step by silent step, knowing I had to leave before they realized I had discovered everything. Because now I knew the truth. And the truth was enough to save me, if I could escape before they saw me. I moved backward through the hallway, one small step at a time, praying the floor wouldn't creak under my feet. My hands were shaking so much I had to press them against my sides to steady myself. I didn't want to make a sound. I didn't want them to hear even a breath. My heart was pounding so loud inside my chest, I felt sure it could echo through the whole house. But somehow they remained completely unaware. They kept talking, planning, whispering about my future like I wasn't even alive. When I reached the front door, I paused. I was afraid to touch the handle, afraid it might click or squeak, afraid the sound would give me away. I stayed completely still for a moment, listening carefully to make sure neither of them was walking toward me. Their voices still came from the living room. Calm, confident, certain. They hadn't noticed anything. I took a slow breath and turned the handle as gently as I could. I pulled the door open just an inch, then another, until there was enough space for me to slip out. I stepped outside, keeping my bag close to my body so it wouldn't bump against anything. I eased the door shut. Behind me, making sure it didn't slam, making sure the latch didn't make noise. The moment it closed, I felt the air hit my chest, cold and sharp. I didn't realize how hard I was breathing until I was outside. My knees felt weak. My throat felt tight. I wanted to cry, but the shock was so strong that no tears came out. I stood there on the porch for a moment, gripping the railing to keep myself from collapsing. Then I forced myself to walk. My legs felt heavy, but they moved. I made it down the steps, then onto the sidewalk, then farther down the street. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I kept my head down, my breathing short and fast, my body shaking. I didn't stop until I was 2 streets away and certain no one was following me. Once I felt far enough, I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, but my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold it. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but I didn't trust my voice to come out steady. I couldn't explain anything yet. I couldn't speak. My mind was spinning with everything I had heard. Instead of calling, I kept walking. I walked straight toward the lawyer's office. My steps were slow at first, then faster, then steady, pushed forward by something deeper than fear. I needed help. I needed to tell someone the truth. I needed to show someone what they were planning before it was too late. When I reached the office building, I pushed the door open and went inside. The lawyer looked up from his desk, surprised to see me back so soon. His smile faded the moment he saw my face. I didn't have to explain much. My shaking hands, my uneven breathing, my pale expression told him enough to know something was wrong. He asked me gently what had happened, and the words finally came. Not loud, not dramatic, soft, heavy, honest. I told him everything I had heard, everything I had seen, every word they whispered, every plan they made, every detail that showed they were preparing to take everything from me. His expression changed slowly as I talked, first shock, then concern, then something firm and serious. He listened to every word, nodding, absorbing the truth, understanding the danger I had narrowly escaped. When I finished, he didn't hesitate. He didn't doubt me. He didn't tell me I was imagining things. He believed me instantly. His voice turned firm, almost protective, as he told me that what they were planning was not only wrong but dangerous and illegal. He told me I had done the right thing by coming back. He told me I was safe here. He told me he would take care of the rest, and for the first time since hearing that terrible sentence in the hallway, I felt a small breath of relief settle in my chest. I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't trapped. I had escaped their plan, and now finally I had someone on my side. The lawyer didn't waste a second after hearing my story. He didn't lean back in his chair. He didn't pause to think. He sat up, straight, pulled the papers toward him, and began typing immediately. His calm but serious focus made me feel like I had walked into the one place where my son's plan couldn't reach me. I watched his hands move across the keyboard, steady and quick, like he already knew exactly what needed to be done. He asked me a few short questions, clear ones, direct ones, questions about my current documents, my accounts, my property, and my intentions. I answered each one with a shaky voice, doing my best to stay steady even though my heart still felt like it was beating too fast. Each answer I gave seemed to strengthen his resolve. He nodded each time, typing faster, making changes, protecting me piece by piece. He pulled up my file and turned the screen slightly so I could see that he was removing my son's name from every section he had previously been listed in. Watching his name disappear from those lines felt like air returning to my lungs after hours of holding my breath. Line by line, page by page, my son lost every piece of access he once had. The control he thought he would gain vanished with each click. The lawyer explained calmly that people try things like this more often than I would think. He said families sometimes use trust to hide their intentions. He said people in vulnerable positions get taken advantage of when they least expect it. He didn't say it in a way that blamed me. He said it in a way that told me I wasn't the first, and I wasn't stupid for not seeing it sooner. That comfort alone made tears burn behind my eyes. He moved to the next step without hesitation. He added a clause that blocked my son from ever accessing my documents in the future, no matter what excuse he tried to use. It was clear, strong, and permanent. My son would have no legal power over me, not now, not later, not ever again. The lawyer explained each part slowly so I understood perfectly what I was approving. Then he drafted something new, something I didn't even know existed until that moment. Elder Protection Notice. Immediate effect. He typed the title in big letters at the top of the page, then turned the screen again so I could see how powerful those words were. He explained that it was a formal legal shield, a document that warned any future office, agency, hospital, bank, or court that I was under legal protection from financial manipulation and forced agreements. He told me it would make it impossible for anyone to pressure me into signing something again. It would force professionals to confirm my choices directly with me, away from anyone who might be influencing me. He said this gave me the strongest defense the law could offer. As he drafted each line, he explained how it would protect me. He explained how my son would be blocked from making decisions for me. He explained how I could choose someone I trusted if I needed help later. He explained how this document made me safer than I had been in years. Every word felt like a wall being built between me and the people who wanted to use me. When he finished, he printed everything and placed the pages gently in front of me. He handed me a pen, but his voice softened when he reminded me that I didn't have to sign anything until I felt ready. I took a moment to breathe, to steady myself, to let the fear drain out enough for my hands to stop shaking. Then I signed, slowly, carefully, one line at a time. Each signature felt like I was taking my life back. Each page felt like I was closing a door that had nearly been forced open. When the last page was done, the lawyer collected the documents, stamped them, and secured them in a folder marked with my name. He looked at me with a firm expression and told me that I was now fully protected, that no one, not my son, not his wife, not anyone, could take advantage of me again. He reminded me that what I heard at home wasn't love, it wasn't care, it wasn't family, it was manipulation. And now, legally, they had no power left. For the first time since hearing their plan, I felt something shift inside me. I felt strength, I felt safety, I felt the quiet peace of knowing I wasn't as alone as I thought. My son had planned to trap me with papers, but now I had my own papers, stronger, clearer, and ready to protect me from everything they tried to do. By the time I left the lawyer's office, the sun was starting to go down. The air felt cooler, calmer, almost gentle against my skin. I walked slowly, holding the folder he gave me close to my chest like it was something precious. And in a way, it was. Those papers were my safety, my protection, my proof that I was not helpless, no matter what my son and his wife believed. When I reached the corner of the street, my phone buzzed for the first time. It was my son. His name lit up on the screen, and for a moment, my heart tightened again. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I didn't know him by voice, not after what I had heard. I kept walking. Then the phone buzzed again. And again. 3 calls, 4 calls, 5. His name kept flashing, each call more frantic than the last. I guess they had finally realized I wasn't in the house. And maybe they wondered if I had heard them. Maybe they were starting to panic. Maybe they had discovered the empty hallway and the quiet door. I didn't answer a single call. I didn't even slow down. I just kept walking with the same steady pace, feeling a strange sense of calm settle inside me. The same son who thought he could decide my entire life with one signature was now calling me like he needed something, but I didn't pick up. When I reached home, I didn't go inside right away. I stood near the walkway, breathing slowly, reminding myself that I wasn't the same woman who had stood frozen in the hallway earlier. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had the truth. I had the law. And they had nothing. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message, a long one. But I didn't open it. I didn't need to read anything he wrote. I already knew what was inside: fake concern, quick excuses, maybe lies to cover the truth, maybe fear disguised as anger. I didn't need to see any of it. I walked into the house calmly. My son and his wife were in the living room, standing up the moment they heard the door open. Their faces were tense, their eyes were wide, their panic was clear. They didn't know what I had heard, they didn't know where I'd gone, they didn't know what I had done. For the first time, they looked nervous around me. My son opened his mouth like he wanted to speak, but no words came out. His wife stepped forward slightly, but when she saw my expression, calm, steady, silent, she stepped back again. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The silence between us said more than any words ever could. Something had shifted, and they felt it. The control they thought they had was gone. Completely gone. I walked past them without stopping. I didn't rush. I didn't shake. I didn't look afraid. I set the folder on the table where both of them could see it. Then, I looked at my son just long enough for him to understand one thing. Whatever plan he had, whatever trap he prepared, whatever future he imagined, it was over. He stared at the folder, but he didn't reach for it. He didn't dare. I went to my room, closed the door gently, and finally let myself sit down. The weight that had pressed on my chest all day slowly began to lift. I took a long breath, the first breath that felt real in hours. My phone buzzed again on the nightstand, but I ignored it. I didn't need to hear anything more from him. Later, I sat at my table with a cup of warm tea. The house was quiet, but not the heavy, dangerous quiet from before. This was a peaceful quiet, a safe quiet, a quiet that belonged to me again. I thought about the moment I had heard his sentence in the hallway. I thought about the papers, the whispers, the betrayal, and then I thought about the lawyer's office, the protection, the strength I had regained. I whispered softly to myself, I may forget documents, but I won't forget what I saw today. And for the first time in a long time, I knew one thing for certain: justice had already begun.